Switching gears, we have completed our creative piece, our creative extension of our resume, and now we are going to be moving back into a more professional space. So I just want to remind you guys that in this professional space, we are working on our oral language. Speaking professionally, not to say that there's not a time and place for other ways to communicate, but in the room during this hour, we are focused on the written and read and oral professional language. So just remember that we are treating this room as if we are practicing for a job. And I know that now you guys have a resume to go get one, to leave one and get a different one, to sort of start that process. And just because we are done with the resume unit does not mean you cannot turn it in or edit. It just means as a class, we are moving on. And in the future, if, say, in 2 months, you find yourself applying to a job for the summer, Ms. Brown and I are more than welcome to, we will welcome you back to work over it, look over it, edit it, add recent jobs. So just because things end in the classroom does not mean that they either cannot be turned in or that they cannot be revisited on a personal level. So just keep that in mind. As we move on to our next unit, we have done email professionalism, we have done resume and work professionalism, and now we are moving on to professional letters. This is a great way to learn how to communicate professionally in a college or workspace. And the vessel in which we're gonna do this is a letter to administration. So this is relevant to you because this is a place and a time that you're gonna be able to vocalize any issues you have with the institution of Great Oaks. That's after school, during school, before school, transportation, fellows, teachers, staff. But we're going to do it in a professional way that is solution oriented. So our objective and the goal and the why. Over the course of your time in an academic setting, we have heard your venting or ideas to make school a place you want to be and a place that holds you accountable. I personally think Ms. Brown has done a fantastic job in the physical space doing both of those things, and we are meeting you halfway, maybe 75-25. From what teachers do or do not discuss, events to hold, sports, conversation revolving how to make this place a place you want to be, fair, safe, and progressive is important to your administration. Whether you hear them say it or not, whether you feel heard or not, this is going to be a place where we get, power in our voice. What all leaders of institutions appreciate is feedback. However, professional feedback is different than sitting around inventing or complaining. The process of writing this letter to your Great Oaks administrators will help you understand the importance of a feedback cycle, respectful dialogue in difficult topics, and formulating your tone and words to do two things: persuade while also keeping a positive relationship. This can be used for any experience that you pay for. If you go to an event and you did not like your experience there, you can write a letter. If you need to write a letter to your future boss, a business proposal, a future professor, these are all ways that you can use this on the flip side when you complete and develop these skills, right? Because a lot of times we want something to change and something to be done, but complaining doesn't get that there. And just complaining can also bring a negative piece or aspect to the relationship, right? Teachers or Mr. Pellegrino or anyone that is responsible for something that you are participating in doesn't just want to hear complaints. They do want to help and change and fix, but they can't come up with the solution all by themselves. And they will see maturity and professionalism in you having a potential solution. So the goal here is a succinct typed, apologies, but everything up until we type the final draft can be handwritten. Ms. Brown will be printing the brainstorm. Succinct typed single-space letter, about 1 page long, directed to one or multiple Great Oaks administrative members regarding an issue and potential solution for the school. You will be using the Ethos, Pathos, and Logos framework from ELA, and we can talk about that as a refresher, and we'll be trying to utilize the same language in addition to having a dash of persuasion, because remember, we're trying to obtain something here. So for this half day, we're just going to really go over the different roles. We're going to think about what issues we could discuss, and we're also going to link departments to issues just to get our brain awake. So in general, we have Mr. Scalisi, who is the executive director. He's like top of the food chain, right? He is the ultimate decider, with people underneath him as like department people. So, for example, after Mr. Scalisi, you do have the two separate school principals. Mr. Pellegrino would be the high school principal, and Ms. Linares would be the middle school principal. Then, in a separate department, but still a cohesive part of the unit, you have Mrs. Brown, who is the director of culture. And then underneath Ms. Brown, you obviously have the deans, the culture deans. But if we're talking about admin, it's going to be Mrs. Brown. Then we have Ms. Thomas and Ms. Meyer. If you're looking at potential solutions for issues or inconsistencies or topics revolving fellows, that's who you'd be writing to. We have Mrs. Hubbard, who is the administrator for operations and events, proms, dances, field trips, perhaps sports. We will talk about how they layer together, but she would be more responsible to receive a letter for anything that is operational or logistical about school. And then we have Miss Frances Barnes, which will be heading curriculum. So any changes within the classroom walls would be a letter directed towards her and potentially the principal aligned with that classroom or grade. So what do I mean by that? We are going to do two things more in a school style physical space, and that's going to be linking issues with departments and coming up with issues, right? So at the top right, I have this list of who does what. With Ms. Brown, you guys are going to go through 6 issues, like I think we should this, or this is an issue because, and then you're going to talk about who would we write this letter to. I'm going to do the first one, and then you guys can challenge that or agree or disagree, and then move on with Ms. Brown. So the cell phone policy has an array of issues that link to not paying attention or lack of student autonomy, which means control, and we need new policies. Cell phone policy is a greater school issue, but it could also lend itself to how we use them in the classroom. So that could be curriculum. It is involving every student at the school. So that could also be an operational aspect with Ms. Hubbard and Wi-Fi and internet access. It could big time potentially be directed to Ms. Brown, because we know that cell phones are an issue in terms of that behavior creates either engagement with work or disengagement with work, right? And then we have issues with not putting it away and it being removed from your personal space, which causes issues of the autonomy. So that could be Ms. Brown. If we're speaking specifically to how we use cell phones in middle school, that would be a Ms. Linares letter. If we're talking about high school, obviously that would be Mr. Pellegrino. If it's an over-encompassing overall cell phone policy that we want to work on, that's more Mr. Scalisi. So you see how all of these things layer, right? If I'm a student and we're doing a project in 6th grade and I need my cell phone to get it done because I don't have my Chromebook or it's being fixed or I don't have internet at home, then that is directly related to perhaps Miss Frances Barnes and Miss Linares, because that over encompasses my specific class and my specific grade for my specific needs, right? So the more specific you are with your issue and solution, that's going to tell you more specifically who your letter will go to. If it's super general about policy, then you're looking at 3 or 4 people attached to this letter. You guys can break this down, talk about it 1 through 6. That's going to be the first thing we do today. And then the second thing we do, you have 6 examples of issues that I just came up with off the top of my head that I think students would be vocalizing, and then either written on the board by Ms. Brown, or you guys can take notes, or we can add them as text here. Oops. We will just in conversation and discussion form, jot down a bunch of different issues that we can see. We can make them more specific. We can decide if that's a general one. And then Wednesday, we can bring this back up to the board and add. And as we move on to my example, we'll see after my example, what you guys will use. So this will be a running document and a working document. So it's never going to be finished because we're always going to come up with ideas. So in conclusion, we're going to be working on the letter to admin with a problem that we're going to detail out, adding a solution to the end, because we are coming to the understanding that to create that fair, safe, progressive space includes feedback, but it includes respectful feedback. We're going to flesh out the admin roles and link issues to different departments, and then come up with some issues that we think are relevant to now and creating a better, safer, more progressive space here at Great Oaks. We will move on to later parts of the slideshow throughout the week. So this is just a slow introduction.